Okay, shall we begin? Thanks for coming to the press conference at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Teddy Jimbo. I'm a former board member here, and I'm a co-chairman of the committee that's inviting speakers like Mr. Murakami today. And our speaker today is, of course, Mr. Seiichiro Murakami. He is a member of the House of Representatives, and he's 63 years old from Ehime Prefecture. Just to give you a brief bio, he was born in 1952 in Ehime Prefecture, and he graduated from the Tokyo University. And he became the legislative aide of former lawmaker Toshio Komoto. He was a faction leader back then. In 1986, he ran for the House of Representatives for the first time, and he won. And ever since his first election in 1986, he's been elected 10 times, and he's never been lost in the election ever since. And he's from like many other LDP politicians, he's from a politician's family. He's a third-generation politician. His grandfather and father are both a member of the LDP and the Lawmaker as well. And also, he's actually a brother-in-law of Katsuya Okada, the head of the DPJ. His sister, Mr. Murakami's sister, is married to Mr. Okada. Of course, Mr. Okada was in LDP, of course. And he became known when he publicly opposed or expressed the opposition to the state secrecy law last year. And he actually was the only LDP member who did not vote yes in the Parliament direct voting of the state secrecy law. And again, he is now publicly opposing this security laws that the Abe government is pushing forward. He's probably the only LDP member who is publicly renouncing the security legislations. But he says there are many within the LDP who are actually against it, but haven't been able to speak up. So I'm sure he's going to tell us why he's the only one, why he can speak up while others can't, and why others cannot do so. And he says that he's been taking sort of a very controversial stance as far as the LDP's position is concerned, but he says that he himself is actually a Mr. LDP, Mr. Jiminto. He represents the mainstream of Jiminto, but the Jiminto has shifted so rightward, so that he now feel a little bit alone, lonely. He found himself standing alone in LDP. And he's so stressed out because he's alone, and he says because of the stress, he's getting skinnier and skinnier every day. So maybe he will tell us something about that too. So let me introduce Mr. Seiichiro Murakami.
どうも皆さんこんにちは。ただいまご紹介に預かりました村上であります。
Ladies and gentlemen, how do you do? As introduced, my name is Murakami.
昨年に引き続き今年もまたお呼びいただき本当に光栄に思います。
I feel honored indeed to have been invited to speak here last year, and once again I am honored to be invited to speak here this year.
昨年は集団的自衛権の閣議決定までで、終わったわけでありますが、いよいよ本年安保法制ということで集団的自衛権を含む法律案が11本出されました。
Now, last year it was only at the cabinet decision level that the matter of collective self-defense was in. However, this year, in regard to the security legislation, with the advent of collective security, there has been 11 bills.
毎日のように国会においてこの法案が議論されていますが、 議論されればされるほど問題点がどんどん出てきて、そしてまた議論されればされるほどですね、いろいろな問題が矛盾が出てきているような気がします。
I feel that since the bills are being discussed in the Diet every day, the more the discussions are carried out, more problems seem to emerge. And more discussions being carried out seems to have more contradictions emerge as well.
まず去年も申し上げたんですが、実はこれが去年の岩波の世界という雑誌の5月号に書いたワイマールの落日を繰り返すなという文章で、私はですね、この集団的自衛権の行使を可能にするには憲法改正以外に道はないということを申し上げました。
And this is something which I said last year, and in the Iwanami magazine Sekai, or World, it was mentioned that we are facing the danger of repeating once again the fall of the Weimar Republic. And in regard to realizing collective self-defense, I felt and have said that the only way that this could be realized was through the amendment of the current constitution.
ご承知のように、集団的自衛権というのは、自分の国が攻められていないのに、同盟国が攻められているときには戦争ができるということであります。
As you're aware, collective self-defense means that even if there is no invasion on one's own country, it is possible to participate in a war if one of your allies is being invaded.
で、これを可能にするためには、憲法を改正する以外に道はないと申し上げたわけであります。
And I have said that the only way that it would be possible to do this would be to carry out an amendment of the Constitution.
本来ならば正々堂々と憲法改正の発議をして国民の皆さんの国民投票において賛成が得られれば集団的自衛権を行えばよし、反対が多ければ集団的自衛権は諦めるというかやめるということが私は民主主義であると、そういうふうに考えております。
Now, normally I believe that one should boldly move forward with the amendment procedures and seek the vote of the people of Japan. And if it turns out to be the case that the majority are in agreement with the concept of collective self-defense, then this should be pushed forward. But if there are more who are opposed to the idea of collective self-defense, then I believe that the way of democracy calls for abandoning the idea of pursuing collective self-defense.
それから2番目の大きな理由は、実は2年前から申し上げてたのは、ご記憶のある方もいらっしゃると思いますが、安倍さんが衆議院の委員会で、小松さんという、もう亡くなりましたが、法制局長官がこの解釈を変更することによって集団的自衛権の行使が可能だと言われたときに、質問に対して、法制局長官は内閣の一部局であるから、総理である私が全責任を負うという答弁なさいました。
And this is something that I have mentioned 2 years ago, and there are two major reasons about this situation, but I should like to mention that 2 years ago, some of you may recall the details about this, but at the time when Mr. Abe was dealing with the Bureau for Cabinet Legislation, there was the head of the Cabinet Legislation Bureau, Mr. Komatsu, who has now passed away. But there was discussions about the changing of the interpretation in regard to collective self-defense. And during the course of the questioning, then it was mentioned that at that point that as the Prime Minister, that total responsibility lay in the hands of Mr. Abe.
私はこれ多分大変なことになるだろうと思いました。それはなぜならば、法制局長官というのは内閣における法律顧問であって、本来ならば客観的な判断で、内閣のですね、今までの考え方やそういうものに対してコントロールしてきたわけです。簡単に言えばですね、お相撲さんの行司役がですね、その回しをつけて、土俵に上がってしまったと、ここからがですね、実はボタンの掛け違いというか、大きなですね、 問題が出てきたんじゃないかというふうに思っております。
And I believe that this is indeed a grave matter because when it comes to the head of the Cabinet Legislation Bureau, who was normally supposed to act as a position of objective consultation within the cabinet, if he takes control in that manner, then it would almost be as if the master of ceremonies in the sumo tournaments, the gyoji, suddenly puts on the mawashi himself and stands within the ring. It is almost like mistaking which button you should button up. And so this is indeed a grave matter.
なぜならば、もし内閣の一部局である法制局長官が解釈を変更することによって憲法を変えることができるようになれば、それは例えば私は憲法の最大原則である主権在民、それから基本的人権の尊重まで時の内閣によってその法制局長官が恣意的に解釈を変更することによって変えてしまうと、それはもう明らかにですね、憲法があってなきがごとき有名無実化してですね、憲法が空洞化してしまうと。でそうなればもはや法治国家ではないと、そう考えるからであります。
And why I say this is because if it is possible for the head of the Cabinet Legislation Bureau to change the interpretation of the Constitution, then it would mean that the main points of the current Japanese Constitution of sovereignty to the people and respect for basic human rights would be undermined, and that it would mean that the person who is the head of the Cabinet Legislation Bureau can make an arbitrary change to the interpretation of the Constitution. And so that would mean that the Constitution would only exist in name only, and that it would mean a hollowing out of the Constitution.
ある方は日本国憲法は熊の大典ではないと、絶対変えることはできないというふうにおっしゃるかもしれませんが、戦後教育を受けた私は平和主義と主権在民と基本的人権はいつなる時代においてもいつなる場合においても決して変更してはならないことだと私は確信しております。
And this would undermine the rule of the law. And when it comes to the constitutions, although there may be people who will argue otherwise, as a person who has been educated through the post-war education system, I believe that the principles of pacifism, the sovereignty to the people, and the respect for basic human rights is something which absolutely should not be subject to change.
それからですね、そもそも今回のですね、この集団的自衛権の法制の根拠をですね、何に求めたか、我が自民党は。それはご交渉のようにですね、砂川判決と47年のですね、政府見解であるというわけであります。
And in regard to what was the legislative rationale that our LDP has chosen to use in regard to the current matter of collective self-defense, it turns out that it is the ruling of the Sunagawa case, as well as the position of the government that was made in 1972.
もう皆さん、この間のですね、衆議院の憲法調査会の3人の非常に常識な憲法学者が3人とも違憲だと言われたので、もうお分かりだと思うんですが、99% の憲法学者、それから歴代の法制局長官、そしてほぼ全員の判事や検事や弁護士の法曹の皆さん、私が議論する限りにおいては、全部こういう砂川判決やですね、昭和47年の政府見解が根拠ではないと。でその証拠にいろいろ持ってきたんですが、これはですね、朝日新聞でまた砂川判決が根拠とは驚きだと、それから東京新聞は安保法案乏しき合憲性と、砂川判決が拡大解釈されていると、それからですね、毎日新聞は安保転換を問うと、やはり違憲法案だと。それで極めつきはですね、実は55年前の砂川判決の時の弁護団がまだ生きていらっしゃいます。砂川判決の弁護団の生きている人たちが、 合憲主張だというのは国民を惑わす強弁だ、詭弁だと言ってます。で、最高裁判決には集団的自衛権の行使の根拠はないと、当事者の弁護士までが言ってるわけであります。
And in regard to the situation of this, now there have been in the lower house, as you know, the three persons who were constitutional academics and are people of common sense who, through the research procedures, had all unanimously agreed that that kind of interpretation that is being suggested is not constitutional. And 99% of academics who study the Constitution, as well as the past heads of the Cabinet Legislation Bureau, as well as judges, prosecutors, and lawyers that I have spoken to, have all said that neither the Tsunagawa ruling nor the position of the government in 1972 can act as a rationale for justifying collective self-defense. And there is much proof that backs that position, such as the Asahi newspaper that has commented on what a surprise it is that now the government is taking up the aspect of the Tsunagawa incident and trying to use it for their position, or the Tokyo newspaper that has mentioned that in the security legislation there is an expanded interpretation of the Tsunagawa case, nor the Mainichi newspaper, which has said that this is clearly an unconstitutional bill. Now, 55 years ago, the Tsunagawa ruling came about, and there are survivors in the lawyer group who have all said that that ruling does not make it constitutional for collective self-defense, and that if the government is saying so, then they are using false logic. And so it is surprising indeed that this is what is being used as rationale for the justification of collective self-defense by the Supreme Court through the Tsunagawa ruling.
このように大多数の国民の皆さん方や学者の皆さん方が意見の法案であるということがですね、大体、コンセンサスで得られているのに、これをあえて強引にこのまま突破することはですね、私は日本の将来、日本の民主主義において多大なるですね、大きな禍根を残すんじゃないかというふうに心配しております。
Now, I am very much concerned that despite the fact that the majority of people and the majority of academics believe that the bill is unconstitutional, without gaining a consensus on this, the fact that the government is still trying to force this through is something that I believe will be a major scar in Japan's future and for democracy in Japan.
すなわち、ご承知のように、来年から18歳の方が投票権を持つようになります。
Because as you know, people of the age of 18 will be able to vote.
我々は若い皆さん方に、立憲主義を守れと、三権分立を守れと、ずっと、教えてきているわけであります。
And we have been teaching the young people that constitutionalism should be protected and that the principle of the separation of three powers should be maintained.
そもそも憲法は国家権力が暴走しないためにあるために立憲主義があるわけであります。
And constitutionalism and the Constitution exists so that the national powers do not go wild.
でそのために行政や司法や立法がチェック&バランスの三権分立を守らなきゃいけないと、そのために三権分立を守るべきだということを言ってきているわけであります。
And that there needs to be a check function carried out by the three powers of the administrative, judicial, and legislative branches of arms of the government. And so that is why it has been called for that there should be a principle of the separation of three powers.
それで若い人々に立憲主義を守れと、三権分立を守ると言っておきながら、天下の自民党が自らそれをですね、破るようなことをしたらば、私は若い人たちに非常な不信感を持たれるんではないかと懸念するわけであります。
But despite the fact that we have been telling the young people that constitutionalism and the separation of the three powers should be maintained and protected, if under the heavens LDP should breach that, then I believe that I am concerned that it will cause considerable mistrust among the young.
それから小林先生が言っているように、多分この法案が通っていけばですね、違憲訴訟が連発されることになると思います。
And I believe that, as Mr. Kobayashi has noted, if this legislation is passed, then it could well be that there will be one lawsuit after another that calls for the fact as unconstitutional.
そして最後に総務会で私は説明者に、もし違憲訴訟が起こって違憲判決が出たときにどうなるんだと言ったら、この安保法案は執行するというふうな答えがありました。
And finally, in the LDP General Council, when I raised the question as to what would happen if there were a lawsuit that deemed that the legislation is unconstitutional, and if there is the ruling that it is unconstitutional, I asked what would happen, and I was told that still it would be the security legislation would be implemented.
もう私はびっくりいたしました。
It truly was astonishing to me.
我々の親父や父の時代は法律案を出すときには縦横目斜め筋交いから質問が出てもパーフェクトに答えられるような法案は以外は出さなかった。つまり質問がされて明確に答えられないような法案は決して出さなかった。それが今申し上げたようにですね、非常に違憲性の疑義のあるこういう法案を出すということはですね、非常に私はですね、もう一回思いとどまって踏みとどまって考える必要があるんじゃないかというふうに考えているわけであります。
Now, we were taught by our fathers and forefathers about the fact that if there is going to be legislation presented, then no matter from which direction, right or left, up or down, or from the side, when questions come to you, it is necessary to perfectly be able to reply to those questions. And if it is not possible to provide a clear answer to those questions, then such legislation should not be presented. However, now I am very much concerned about the fact that although there are doubts raised as to whether the legislation is constitutional or not, the fact that we are moving forward on this basis is something that I believe requires rethinking and reviewing.
法案そのものについてはですね、ちょっと時間がないので省略しますが、まず一番の大きい問題点はですね、新しい新3要件と言ってるんですが、あくまでこれは自民党と公明党の合意をするために作った新3要件であって、法案としてですね、構成要件が非常に曖昧であります。簡単に言えば、どこまでですね、何ができるのかということが全くはっきりされてない。ですから実は私が心配しているのは、昨日の法制局の長官の答弁だと、はっきり言って論理的にですね、整合性が保たれてないんじゃないかなと。
Now, in regard to the legislation itself, I do not have details to go into I don't have the time to go into the details of this, but the biggest problem is that there are what is referred to as the Shin-san-yoken, or the three new requirements. But this is just something that was brought about so that the LDP could come into an agreement with Komeito in regard to this legislation. And it is quite ambiguous as to what is actually possible to do. But I am concerned about this, the fact that in regard to the legislative basis of this, that the head of the Legislation Bureau has discussed this on this subject with a lack of logical rationale to it.
結局は時の内閣総理大臣が存立危機だと認めれば、それが存立危機になってですね、集団的自衛権ができるということになってしまいます。
What it boils down to is that once the Prime Minister of Japan has deemed that a situation is a crisis to the very existence, then it would immediately be possible to implement collective self-defense.
それから一番重要なのは、戦前において、日本の軍部の独走を止められなかった。 じゃあ今回、この法案において、独走を止められるですね、歯止めがあるのかどうか。確かにですね、国会承認という手続きがありますが、今のように与党が圧倒的多数であれば、普通の法案を通すよりもイージーに通ってしまう。これでは残念ながらですね、戦前の失敗した暴走を食い止めるような、残念ながら歯止めにはならないんではないかと、それを危惧しております。
Most important is that there was a time when, during the pre-war era, it was not possible to stop the military from doing whatever they liked because there were no brakes. And of course, as for the current situation, what brakes are being considered is the procedure that requires Diet approval. However, with the situation where the ruling party has such a dominant position, and then it may well be that it would be easier for them to get their way than passing normal legislation. And regrettably, I am concerned that this may once again create a situation whereby, like the pre-war days when the military could run wild and do as they like, there are no brakes in place.
最後にお話ししたいのは、今回の問題は一政治家や一官僚の問題ではないということです。
Finally, I would like to mention that this current problem is not just a problem of a single politician nor a single bureaucrat.
国民お一人お一人が今の憲法についてどのように考えて、どのようにですね、民主主義を守っていくかと、それが問われている問題だと考えています。
I believe that this is a question that has been raised to each Japanese national as to how to perceive the current constitution and how this can be protected.
正直申し上げて、このようなことをですね、党内で言い続けるということはなかなか大変なことであります。
And frankly speaking, it is truly a tough thing to continue within our party this kind of position.
私は次の世代はもう財政も経済も金融も社会保障も大変だと、その上に地球の裏側まで行ってもらうと、じゃあ誰が次の世代のためにですね、弁明するというか、彼らのですね、立場を考えてあげることができるのかなという気がします。
I think that when we consider the next generation and the fiscal and economic and financial and social welfare issues that they will be facing, then if they are forced to go to the other side of the earth, then who is going to be in a position to think about what needs to be done for the next generation?
大体これぐらいにして、あとは皆さん方のご意見ご質問を伺いたいと思いますが、あくまで申し上げます。私はですね、これを言い続けているのは、私は正直申し上げて、自分のためだとかそういうんで言ってるんじゃないです。私は10回連続選挙を通って、1回も自民党を出たこともないし、1回も野党の不信任案に同調しなかった60数人のただ一人の生き残りです。私こそが、私はミスター自民党だと考えております。なぜそのミスター自民党がこういうことを言うかというと、我が愛する自民党と我が愛する日本がですね、誤った道に踏み出さないように、何としてでもですね、ここはもう一度考え直してほしいという気持ちで、今日は参加させていただきました。以上であります。
And I would like to rest my case here, but what I would like to mention is that I am looking at how we can. I have repeatedly mentioned about the fact that I am not doing this for my own sake. I should like to mention that I have been elected 10 times, and during the course of my career have never left the LDP, and I am the only one among 60 who is able to say this, so that I can truly say that I am a Mr. LDP. And I should like to say that I love the Liberal Democratic Party and I love Japan, but I am concerned that we are headed in the wrong direction, and so therefore I believe that it is necessary once again to rethink the directions that we are about to move forward towards. And with that in mind, I have decided to participate here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Murakami. I forgot to actually introduce our interpreter today. Mr. Funasaka Yutaka is our interpreter today. And of course, And of course, my far right is James Sims. He's our new president of FCCJ. Okay, so we're going to go to Q&A, and let's see. We're going to have raise a hand, and I point you, and then you come up and state your name and your affiliation, and please try to make your question brief and no speeches, please. And let's start with the regular members, working press. Yeah, go ahead, and then Linda.
Isabel Reynolds from Bloomberg. Given that you're concerned the party might be going in the wrong direction, how important do you think it is that someone stands against Mr. Abe in the presidential election? And would you be prepared to do that yourself?
よくね、その党の執行部に反対したりして、おかしいんじゃないかと言われるんですけれども、それは違うんですね。本当に政治家の良心、信念として、たとえ総理であろうと幹事長であろうと間違ってると思ったら、それはおかしいということが本当は党のためになるし、私は内閣のためになると思ってるんです。
Now, often the executive people of the LDP are saying that it is strange that I should show opposition, but I think that that is wrong. And if, as a politician, your conscience and your beliefs tell you that despite the fact that it may be a prime minister or secretary general of the party, that if they are wrong, then it would be for the sake of the party and it would be for the sake of the cabinet to say to them that that something is wrong.
じゃあ逆にお伺いしますけれども、私が言っていることが論理的におかしいならば、おかしいところを教えていただきたいと思います。
Now, I should like to, on the contrary, ask the question that if you find what I say logically wrong, then I would appreciate if one could tell me where I was wrong.
私が申し上げたいのは、法律的に、憲法理論的におかしいことを天下の自民党がやってはいけないんではないかと。それははっきり申し上げて、後にですね、大変な問題というか、禍根を残すからであります。でそれが見えてるからこそ、そういうことに対してですね、やはり今からですね、もうちょっと冷静に考えた方がいいんじゃないかということを私は2年前から申し上げているわけであります。
What I want to say is that then if there is that something that is wrong legally or in regard to the logic of the Constitution not correct, then that is something that should not be pursued by the LDP because it would be a major problem for the future. And because I am able to see that, I'm saying that at this point in time, then we should be looking at this in a more rational manner. And this is something which I have been repeatedly stressing for the past 2 years.
私はその自分自身の選挙や自分自身のポストが欲しいとかそういう前にですね、やっぱり自分を支持してくれた有権者やまた国民に対して政治家として責任を取ることの方が重要だと、そういうふうに私は考えています。
I believe that rather than thinking of getting elected again or about what post I may be able to attain, before that, I believe that as an obligation to the voters that have supported me, as well as to the people of Japan, it is more important to fulfill my responsibility.
Are you willing to challenge Mr. Abe in the presidential elections if you can draw enough endorsement to claim the candidacy? 総裁選に出る用意はおありですか？
総裁選の要件はいろんな要件がありましてね、その政策だとかそういう面では、かなり自信がありますけれども、やっぱり選挙を戦う面にはいろいろその、物的な面だとか、やっぱりいろいろなものがないとですね、戦いっていうのは難しいんですよね。だからそれは私はそのチャンスがあればやる気があるけれども、はっきり言えば経済的なね無理をしてまでやれるかどうかという問題となると、非常に 難しい面もあるなというふうに考えています。
Now, in regard to the presidential elections, then there is various requirements, and in regard to the matters involving policy, I have confidence. But in order to fight in the elections, there are various physical resources and other matters that are necessary to have in place in order to be able to fight in the elections. And so, therefore, if there is the opportunity to do so, then I do have the will. However, whether I can move ahead despite the economic difficulties of doing so makes it very difficult to move forward.
アメリカの大統領選挙もかなり経費がかかります。で
I understand that the U.S. Presidential elections require much expenses.
Okay, next question, and Linda, and then.
Linda Sieg from Reuters. A lot of the debate obviously is focusing on the question of whether collective self-defense is constitutional under the current constitution. But it seems to me there's also a broader issue that's been raised by the LDP, which is that many, or at least some people in the LDP, feel that the constitution itself was imposed on Japan during the occupation, and for that reason is a source not of pride but humiliation. And I wonder if you could comment on that view of the Constitution. Thank you.
はっきり申し上げると、そういうことをよくミスター石原さんが言うんですけども、憲法を制定したときに多分共産党さん以外はみんな賛成したと思うんですね。
Frankly speaking, that is an argument that has been raised by someone like Mr. Ishihara. But when the Constitution was enacted, all the parties supported it with the exception of the Communist Party.
私はその時まだ生まれてなかったですけれども、私はですね、やはり戦後日本が戦争に負けてここまで発展できたのは、私は今の憲法のおかげだとそういうふうに考えております。
And I was not born yet at that time, but after World War II, after the defeat of Japan, Japan was able to develop to the situation which we are in now, and I believe that this was the result of the Constitution.
もしあの当時のですね、人たちだけで憲法を作ってたとしたら、平和主義や主権在民や基本的な人権の尊重までがあそこまで憲法に書かれてたかと思うと、私は日本人だけでやってたら難しかったんじゃないかなというふうに考えております。
Now, if at that time the people who tried to draft the Constitution worked on it so that they could incorporate pacifism and sovereignty to the people and basic human rights to be expected, I do not believe that the wording would have been able to cover to that extent if it were drafted by Japanese people alone.
だから、もうどうしても変えたいというならば、例えば知る権利だとか環境権だとかあると思うんですが、そういう問題からでもですね、堂々と国民の皆さん方に国民の知る権利や環境権について新たに憲法で設けたいと思うんだけれども、どうかというふうに私は問うていくべきじゃないかと思います。
So if there is the will to, if there is the intention to revise the Constitution, I would suggest that there are such rights such as the right to know or environmental rights, and so boldly it should be presented to the people as to whether they would want to incorporate the right to know or environmental rights within the current Constitution.
Okay, next question.
ジャーマンですね、確かに。ね、ジャーマン覚えてない。
Siegfried Knittel, Austrian newspaper, der Standard. You said Mr. Abe is not acting in coincidence with the rule of law, and a new interpretation of the Constitution of the paragraph 9 is against the rule of law. But Mr. Abe every time says Japan, the rule of law in Japan is very important. So does he not understand the rule of law, or why does he act against rule of law?
What do you think about it? 要するに、もうこれはですね、今まで受けた教育としか言いようがないんです。
I think that it boils down to just the education that he had gone through up until now.
私は正直申し上げて、小学校から大学まで非常に素晴らしい先生たちに教わったというですね、誇りと自負を持っています。
I am very much confident and also proud of the fact that since elementary school through to university, I have been taught by very wonderful teachers.
私は今でも教えてくれた小学校や中学校や高校や大学の先生たちに対して恥じることは一つもありません。
And I have nothing at all to be ashamed of towards all of the teachers that taught me from elementary school through to junior high school and university.
それは私が優等生だからということじゃなくて、私はその先生たちが教えてくれた魂に対して感謝をしてるし、彼らが教えてくれたことは決して間違いでなかったと。そしてこうやって皆さん方の前で堂々と自分の意見を言えるのも、まさにそういう小学校、中学校、高校、大学の先生方の教えであるということであります。
It was not that I was an A student, but I am grateful for what they have taught me, and I believe that what they taught me was not mistaken. And because of that, it is possible for myself to boldly express my opinions in front of everyone here. And this is due to the teachers that have taught me from elementary school, junior high school, and university.
Okay, next question.
Süddeutsche Zeitung, Germany, Neidhardt. If I assume you are not the only one in LDP, and certainly there are people in Komeito too that object to the security laws. So the question is, if and when it comes to a vote, how many people do you think will vote no? And what kind of sanction do you have to expect for these people? I mean, when you were in government, the people who were against the postal reform were thrown out of the LDP. So do you have to expect to be thrown out of the LDP?
正直言って、この法案は政治家の信念や良心の問題だと思います。
Frankly speaking, I believe that the current bill is a matter of a politician's beliefs and conscience.
だから私は総務会において採決の時は党議拘束を発すべきだと主張しました。
And I have asserted that during the discussions of the General Council that this should not be a matter of party discipline regulations.
正直言って、私の部屋や会長室にですね、多くの同僚が来て、憲法改正が筋であると、憲法改正することが一番正しいと言いに来てくれる国会議員は結構多くいます。
Frankly speaking, into my room or the room of the chairman, there are quite a few colleagues that come and say that the most correct way or the most orthodox way of going about things would be to carry out an actual revision of the Constitution.
それから弁護士の士という字とローヤーの弁護士の士と国会議員の代議士の士というのは、侍という意味があります。
It should be mentioned that the Japanese word for lawyer or attorney, solicitor is bengoshi. And the word for the diet member in Japanese is daigishi. Both end with the Chinese character shi, which refers to the samurai warrior class.
これは、先ほど申し上げたように、私一人の個人の問題ではないんです。
And as I've mentioned, this is not a matter of myself alone as an individual.
私の政治の師匠に丸山正夫さんという政治学者がいました。
There was a political scholar by the name of Masao Maruyama who was the
famous 政治学者ね。
And he was a very famous academic in regard to politics.
で彼が亡くなる前にですね、戦後の日本の民主主義が 本物かどうか、虚妄論争というのがあります。これはもう漢字で書くの難しいんですけど、虚実の虚にですね、妄想の妄と書いて虚妄論争、つまり戦後の日本のデモクラシー、要するに民主主義が本物だったかどうかという議論がありました。
And before he passed away, there was a debate in regard to whether the post-war Japanese democracy was truly genuine or not. This argument in Japanese was referred to as the Kyomo Ronso.
その時、プロフェッサー丸山は戦後の日本の民主主義に期待したいと言って、亡くなられました。
But at that time, Professor Maruyama said that he definitely looked forward and had great expectations for the post-war democracy in Japan. And after having said that, he passed away.
まさに今、戦後の日本の民主主義の進化がこの問題で、問われているというふうに私は考えます。
I believe that with this current problem, the true value of post-war democracy in Japan is now being questioned.
ですから、賛成反対して同様な処分を受けるかとか、そういう次元の問題ではなくて、私は日本の民主主義というものを考える場合にですね、これが賛成できるかできないかということはですね、自分の良心に従って判断するしかないと、そういうふうに考えております。
And it's not a matter of what will happen if one votes for or against the bill. It's not at that dimension. Rather, it is a matter to look at in light of Japanese democracy, whether you are for the bill or against it. And so therefore, it is a matter that requires one to make his judgment based on one's conscience.
Why is it that the other politicians who are actually against this legislation cannot speak out, and why only you can?
ミスター・ジンボは非常にデリケートな質問をすると。デリケートな。
It's a very delicate question that has been raised by Mr. Jimbo.
もう率直に申し上げますと、やはり日本が小選挙区制を導入されて、党幹部が選挙、また小比例の順位、そしてまた選挙資金の配分をですね、やはり握ってしまったことによってですね、党の幹部のですね、力が大変大きくなった。昔はそれぞれの派閥というのがあってですね、派閥の人たちが選挙やポストをガードしてくれたんですが、そういう派閥もですね、見識のある力のある領袖がいなくなって、選挙もポストも誰もガードしてくれないと、となればですね、やはり時のですね、やはりトップにですね、反対するよりは選挙やポストがですね、有利にならざるを得ないと、それを決定的にしてしまったのが郵政解散の時のミスター小泉純一郎だということです。
Frankly speaking, since the incorporation of the small election district system, the party heads have gained more power in regard to what posts are being provided or the allocation of the election funds. And since they have grasped this, the power that is held by the heads of the party has increased, so that it is very difficult if in the past, there were different factions, and the factions protected the election funds or the posts for their people. But now we no longer have such people with power in place, and the election funds or the posts are not guarded. And so therefore we have come to a time when rather than oppose something that you do not believe in, there is more priority given to the elections or to the posts that one can attain. And a decisive situation like this came about when the postal reforms were moved forward by Junichiro Koizumi, the prime minister at that time.
Okay, I think we have one more question. Okay, Joe.
Hello, my name is Joël Legendre. I work for the French television, TV5 and BFM TV, and the French radio RTL and some others, so I'm going to stop there. My question is about what you said about the scar in Japan that could come. Is it because of what seems or appears to be a mockery for anybody who has listened the debate about constitutional reform, and I've seen many constitutionalists who actually scream when they see what's happening today. So when you say a scar in Japan, are you describing the current process, or what could happen after this process has been accomplished? In other words, what's next after the reform?
まさにそれを心配しております。
That is something that I'm truly concerned about.
多分ですね、シビル王になるんじゃないかと思うんです。シビル王ってのはどういうことかというと、アメリカで例えば、南北戦争なんですね。それは物的な戦いじゃなくて、要するに法律的な戦いというか、民主的な戦いというか、その時にですね、残念ながら私は今のままだと愛すべき自民党がアメリカの南北戦争に例えると、要するに南軍になってしまうということは、大義名分がなくて負けてしまう危険性があると。でそうすると一番私が心配しているのは、民主党政権もいい加減な政治だったと。で自民党もですね、こういうことをきっちりやらないとですね、本当のですね、政治不信が起こってくると。本当の政治不信が起こってくるということはどういうことかというと、民主主義というのはやはりみんなが常に守り育てなければいけない制度だということです。私が大学の学生の時に、ある政治学者が、民主主義っていうのはいつでも壊れるもんだと。例えばアメリカにおいて第二次世界大戦後、マッカーシズムが起こって、非常に危険な状態になったと。で私は日本もですね、こういう問題をきちっと冷静に判断しなければ、国民のほとんどの人がですね、この法案に疑問を持つと。それを我が愛する自民党が強硬に突破しようとすれば、当然ですね、このなんていうのかな、思想的な面でですね、自民党に対する信頼がですね、失われる危険性があると。でその時に先ほど申し上げたように、民主党もダメだと、自民党もダメだということになればですね、私はですね、ファシズムはまた起こらないように皆さん考えているけれども、そういうですね、危険な状態が起こらざるとも限らないと、それを非常に心配しております。
Now, I think that most likely it can be referred to as a civil law or civil war. In the United States, there was something that was like a civil, there was the Civil War of the United States. And although I'm not talking about a physical battle as such, it could well be that there will be a struggle in regard to democracy in the form of a civil struggle. And I am concerned that it may well be that the Liberal Democratic Party will be like the Confederates in the U.S. Civil War, in the sense that they will be defeated because they are not fighting a good cause. And so this is most concerning to me, because we have seen how irresponsible the Democratic Party of Japan had been, and we have seen the situation of the Liberal Democratic Party. So this will truly create mistrust towards these parties. And the democracy is something which everybody must, through this system, protect and foster. And there was a time in when I was a university student, when there was a political academic that spoke about the fact that democracy is something that can be easily broken. And one case that was cited was the situation of the United States after World War II. The rise of McCarthyism was a difficult situation. So it is necessary to truly deal with this matter in a proper and rational manner. Otherwise, we will have mistrust among the people of Japan. And if the LDP decides to force through the bill, then I believe that ideological trust will be undermined in regard to them. And so it has DPJ, the Democratic Party of Japan, has proven to be not successful. And if it is the case that the Liberal Democratic Party is also not successful, then not well, then it could be that you may think that the rise of fascism is not something that could possibly happen. But I am concerned that it could be a risky situation that results.
ですね、実は戦前にですね、ちょっとこれ英語難しいんだけど、治安維持法とか国家総動員法という法律が出たんですね。これが日本がはっきり言うと焚き火壺に向かう大きな原因になったんですが、その法案もですね、ほとんど議論されないで通ってしまったんですね。 で私は戦前の失敗を繰り返さないためにも今回のような重要な法案についてはとことんですね国民の皆さん方と徹底的に議論して最後まで本当にこれからの日本国憲法をどういうふうに立ち向かっていくのかというところまでですね私は突き詰めて考えるいいチャンスだというふうに考えています。
Now, it happens to be that before World War II, there were laws such as the Chiang Ijiho, or the law to protect national security, and also the Kokka Sodoinho, or the Comprehensive Mobilization National Act. And these are the laws that led Japan into the course of war. And when those bills were originally presented, there was hardly any debate that took place. And so in order to not repeat the mistakes of the pre-war era, I believe that if an important bill such as the current bill is about to be presented, then there should be thorough discussions that are carried out, and it is necessary and provides a good opportunity for us to once again view the matter of the national constitution.
Okay, we're gonna have to wrap up this press conference. Okay, he want to add something in the end.
実はですね、これはちょっと見にくいかもしれませんが、2020年に東京オリンピックがあと5年後なんですが、実はそれまでに大きな問題が5つあるように私は感じています。
Now, this may be difficult to read, but as we head towards the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Paralympics, which is 5 years from now, then these are the matters which must be taken into consideration.
一番上に書いてあるですね、2020年問題というのは、実はですね、この赤い線がですね、すみません、ローマクラブのですね、あれなんですが、19世紀に17億人だったのがですね、2020年には70億ぐらいになって、食料とエネルギーと資源のですね、争奪戦によって経済の停滞が始まるんじゃないかというのが2020年問題です。
And if you look at the top, then there is a red line that indicates what is taking place. And there is the view of the Club of Rome that with the population increase from the 19th century up until 2020, then there is the concerns of the lack of depletion of resources and food shortage that will be taking place as we head towards the 2020 problem.
それから2番目のですね、2020年までに金融の、世界的なですね、大変なアクシデントが起こるというのを、ジョージ・ソロスと一緒にやってたジム・ロジャーズという人が言ってます。
And also, there is a tremendous financial global incident that is being talked about by the person, Jim Rogers, who had worked previously with George Soros.
簡単に言えば、ドルも円ロもユーロもすりすぎたと。ですから、昨日たまたまギリシャがいよいよ大変なことになりますが、ああいうようなことが起こるとですね、世界的にいろんなことが引き起こってくるんじゃないかという心配であります。
And to summarize his thinking, it is that there has been too much dollars, yen, and euros printed excessively. And as represented by the grave situation that is taking place in Greece right now, there is a matter of much concern for the world taking place.
3番目の問題は、2020年度までの財政の黒字化、すなわち財政再建が可能かどうかと。
And the third issue is whether it will be possible to rebuild the fiscal situation of Japan by 2020.
それからこれは今月号のエコノミストに書いてある財政危機の状況のあれでありますが、財政状況はですね、大変な今私は状況だと考えております。
And in this month's issue of The Economist, there is an article in regard to the fiscal crisis, and I believe that the fiscal situation is in a quite a grave situation now.
それから4番目は2020年のオリンピックなんですが、ご承知のように福島の原発事故の汚染水対策や原因解明がまだなされていません。
And also, as we head towards the 2020 Olympics, the fourth point to be raised is that in regard to the nuclear accident in Fukushima, then it has not been, the matter of the polluted water has not been resolved, and the causes have not yet been determined.
台湾、韓国は日本の食料品輸入を停止しております。
And Taiwan and Korea have stopped importing Japanese food.
やはりそういう問題を早く解決しなければなりません。
So this means that obviously these kind of problems have to be quickly resolved.
それから日本はですね、残念ながらこれから東海、南海、東南海のですね、非常なアースクエクス、地震のいろんな問題が起こる危険性があります。
And unfortunately, there are signs that in both the Tokai and the Nankai areas, there are signs that there will be much earthquake activity.
リセントリーじゃないですけど、最近でも桜島、箱根、浅間山、御嶽山、口永良部島、小笠原諸島と、残念ながら活火山が活動期に入っております。
And unfortunately, there has been the activity that has been observed of the active volcanoes in areas such as Sakurajima, Hakone, and Asama, and Ontake, and Kucherabu, and Ogasawara.
これでお分かりのように、自衛隊の方を一人でも海外にですね、行っていただくような余裕はないような私は状況だと考えています。
I don't think that we have the excess capacity to even send one SDF person overseas if we have a situation like this.
私はあと5年しかないのに、これだけの重要な問題がいっぱいあるわけですから、本来政治がすべきことは財政、経済、金融、中継ぐ社会保障の立て直し、外交の立て直しが喫緊の課題だと考えています。
So we only have 5 years until 2020, and so in regard to these kind of important problems, I believe that politics should be focusing on the issues of fiscal, economic, financial, social welfare, and diplomacy matters.
そういう意味においても政策の優先順位をどうするか、私はですね、もう一回考えの時期に来てるんじゃないかなと、そういうふうに考えております。
And I believe that in regard to where the priority should be for the policies, now has come the time when once again it is necessary to rethink priorities.
Okay, Doc. So we're going to wrap up the press conference. Mr. Murakami is kind enough to stay around and exchange name cards after the press conference. And also, we always ask speakers to sign a notebook and write down a motto. And this is what he gave us. One is Yuki, the courage, and the other one is the Nintai, patience or perseverance. So that's what's occupying his mind right now, he says. Okay, and as a customary, we're going to give Mr. Murakami 1 year honorary membership, guest membership card. So please come and join and have a drink with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. This is the second card. Please give me third card, please. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you for coming to the press conference.